Hi, and thank you for watching us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and consider other important aspects of working for yourself, being self-employed, running a small business. So today I'm going to talk about how to correct an error on a VAT return that you've submitted to HMRC. Before I do, if I could ask, if you're new here, please do take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you should need to, as well as being able to access other information that we have on a whole wide range of different topics, all aimed at supporting you in your self-employment and to navigate the tax system as it applies to you. So back then to errors made on your VAT return. So, of course, the first thing to say is if you've made an error, don't panic. It's natural. We all make mistakes from time to time. And the important thing is, how do you correct it and to make sure that you do correct it? So another important thing to mention is that once you have noticed that you've made a mistake on a VAT return, then you should go about rectifying this as soon as possible. Now, one thing to mention is in the event of having a VAT inspection, if you haven't corrected an error, then that would be deemed that HMRC have identified this error, and that could impact the penalty that you are presented for that. So it's really important that once you realise that you've made an error, that you do report this and rectify it as soon as practically possible. Now, I'm talking about error or mistake, but what I actually mean is anything that's not right with your VAT return that you've submitted. So this would also include things that you haven't included. So by now, people will be submitting their VAT returns using Making Tax digital software. And of course, the software is great that if you enter a transaction for a period of VAT that you've already reported on, it will automatically pull that through to the next return. But that does actually mean that that previous return wasn't accurate. So you should, when you're adding late entries, you should be mindful of the value. Now, of course, if you're late adding a purchase invoice or a payment out to a supplier, VAT that you've paid, of course, that's in HMRC's favour. So therefore, there's not so big of an issue, although the overall limits on the amounts still apply. If you are late entering a sales invoice or a receipt in that's VATable, then of course that means that you're late paying that liability to HMRC as well. So as well as considering the amounts that we're talking about, that you just need to be mindful when you're entering things late. So one of the big amount limits, thresholds to be aware of is if your VAT error is over £10,000, you have to specifically flag this up with HMRC. And so this also relates if you were late entering something into your software, that still would mean, as I already mentioned, that first VAT return wasn't correct. So we're talking about any scenario that arises where the VAT return that was submitted to HMRC wasn't accurate. So we specifically talk about errors and mistakes, but sometimes just sort of being late, we wouldn't necessarily think of that as an error. But for this purposes, we're talking about any scenario where the VAT return that you submitted wasn't correct. So if your VAT, if the total discrepancy is under £10,000, then you can simply report that on your next VAT return. So as I was just talking about, your software will automatically know once you've submitted the return, it knows which transactions have been reported. And so say, for example, if you did submitted your VAT return to the end of March to HMRC for the however long the period was for your VAT, and then after submission you realised that you'd forgotten to enter a transaction, maybe your purchase invoice came in late or something like that, and you enter it then into your software dated before the end of March, then the software will deal with that for you. So it will automatically know when you do your next VAT return that that transaction wasn't reported, and it will pull it through. But for the purposes of what we're talking about today, you do need to be aware of the amount. So if that amount is under £10,000, then that is absolutely acceptable to just have that submitted on your next tax return, VAT return, sorry, and make the correction that way. Now, if the error is over £10,000, then you need to actually notify HMRC directly. Now, if you are in that scenario, I'm going to pop in the description a link to the section of gov.uk that you need, and you can make your notification either print off a form, fill it in online, print it off as a PDF and post it, or you can fill that in online through your Gateway account. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the form, and so I can just run through how you the information that you'll need and how you actually complete this information. So here is the form that we use. So it's called a VAT 652. And that is what you use to notify HMRC specifically of an error. So, so basic detail, VAT registration name, and the period of the error. So this is the period that wasn't accurate that you're talking about, the period that whatever the amount should have been reported in. And if you have if you have sort of, maybe if you've flagged up an ongoing issue where something hasn't been reported correctly and it spans more than one quarter, then you must break those down into the relevant periods. So here you would just this is your opportunity to explain what's happened. So it doesn't need to be anything in depth, just a simple explanation of why the error arose. So if it was something that was entered late, something you received late, then you would just put that. If it was an issue that you perhaps you hadn't realised how the software was handling something. The important thing is just to be factual, keep it brief, and to be honest, just explain what's happened. So this will help HMRC understand that you are notifying them of the error and why that error arose, and so that they can help to assess their interpretation of that. So here that they're wanting to know if you will be making the correction on your next VAT return. So if you are using MTD software, it can be easier to still make the entries into your software so it pulls through to the next VAT return. And so what HMRC are basically asking is, when we get your next VAT return, is all these things that you're telling us about, or this thing that you're telling us about, going to be included in that return, or do we need to add this on separately? So that's a simple yes or no, and that's what that means. And then basically you need to know what was submitted on the original return, and you just literally type in those figures. I'm just gonna just to show you what happens, and then you're going to put the correct figure. So if for example it was £2,000 sales that you incorrectly reported. Say that you should have reported 25,000 and you only reported 10,000. So you would then put the correct figure. So if say, for example, all of the rest of the figures were correct, then you would just put what was filed and the correct figures So let's say that the box 3 figure was 15,000 and the correct figure is 15,000. So you just would simply say, and then there's no difference, and then we've got the 15,000 difference. Now, you can see here that there's no provision for is that a minus? It won't accept a minus. So here, all that they're asking is basically whose favour is the mistake in. So in this scenario, we are saying, well, we submitted 10,000, it should have been 25,000. So actually we should have paid an extra 15,000. So that's payable. So that's what that box is all about. So that is the information that you need to have. So it's quite basic, and it's just, sort of understanding which to put in each box. So the basic VAT information, the period of the error, reason for the error, just a simple and brief explanation, factual and honest explanation will be best in that box. If you're going to include it in the next VAT return that you submitted, so is it going to be included in your software, yes or no? And then basically for each column, what you originally submitted and what the correct figures, the difference, and whose favour that is in. So whether you submit that online or you send it off in the post, then HMRC will make a record of that and adjust your account accordingly. And that would then, if there were to be any penalties determined, obviously you have identified this error and you are the one that's brought it to HMRC's attention. So that's really important. It's not always the case that penalties would be applied, but as we know, when penalties are applied, there is a sort of a provision for how helpful you've been, and so actually flagging up the error yourself to HMRC will go a long way in your favour. So as I say, the really important, if you are in this position, please don't panic. It's obviously clear that it happens a lot because there's actually a process, and the key thing to remember is if the difference is under 10,000, you can still notify if you prefer, but you can just simply pop that on your next VAT return, so that over the say, for example, in the scenario I used earlier where you've made an error or you've omitted something in the March return, and then say if you are reporting quarterly and the next quarter is June and you correct it, so over the 2 periods what you have submitted to HMRC will be correct. It's just they're not in the right quarters, and if the difference is under 10,000 that should have gone in the other quarter, then that is no problem. If it's over 10,000, you do need to report that directly and actually highlight that error, but you can still include it on your next VAT return, particularly if you're using MTD software, so that you keep all your actual accounting figures up to date. But it may be that it's in a previous accounting period that's now closed, and so that that might not be possible. So you've just got the option to say, and then as I say, HMRC will adjust your VAT account accordingly. So hopefully this has helped to understand what you need to do, and that you don't need to panic, you just need to put it right. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you look in the playlist section of our YouTube channel, you will find our information loosely catalogued. If you go to the core topics, we have core topics of tax and core topics of other aspects, and these are some just sort of general information that's helpful to everybody running a small business. And then we have the information that we put out regularly is catalogued loosely into trading style. And if you are using MTD software, we do have a series of bite-sized demos on some of the softwares that are available, and they can also be found in the playlist. And as always, if the information is helpful, please do like the video. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.